How many of you stayed up all night to order the PlayStation Pro 30th anniversary bundle only to get into the queue, find yourself way at the end, and by the time you got your opportunity to buy, everything was gone? What if I told you that Sony could do more to give you a fair opportunity to get that console? What if I told you not only could they, but for consumers in Japan, they did? Yeah, that's right. In Japan, Sony has set up rules that protected Japanese consumers while they left American and European consumers out to dry at the hands of scalpers. All these consoles that have been showing up on eBay all across America and UK and Europe, where these bundles for the PS5 Pro 30th anniversary are going anywhere from $5,000 US all the way up to $10,000 or more. Absolutely insane numbers. But as discovered by Automaton, in Japan, Sony took measures to ensure that Japanese consumers, true fans of PlayStation, had a fair opportunity to score this exclusive commemorative console. So, first up, what Sony did is they required potential purchasers to have a PSN account. So, not only did they have to have this PSN account, but they had to have at least 30 hours of PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 runtime on the account, meaning they were up and using it to play games between February 2014 and September 19, 2024. That's right. They made sure that you were an active PlayStation 5 subscriber, PlayStation Network subscriber, I should say. Not only did you have to have it, but you have to be actively using it. Now, of course, that 10-year period is a long time, but what's important about those dates is that was before the announcement of the launch. So they had cut it off so that bots and scalpers had a very low probability of having one of these accounts set up ready to go in order to get into their system. Then what did they do? This one kind of just infuriates me a bit. I gotta say, for those of us that stood up all night, lost sleep, stood in line for when it went live here in the US, and then had to wait an additional hour to an hour and a half to get in there. Well, what they did in Japan is they allowed consumers to pre-register. So when those consoles went on sale, all they had to do was get an email from Sony and then go buy it. There was no queue, there was no waiting around, there was no staying up, none of that. You entered and registered for a lottery. All you had to do was qualify again with the PSN account, 30 hours of gameplay between February 2014 and September 19th, 2024. If you had that, you registered to enter into that drawing. When you were selected, you then got a notification that allowed you to go purchase that elusive uh, low count PlayStation 5 Pro 30th anniversary edition. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is fighting over the scraps, standing in queues, m- competing with bots and scalpers for what remains. While I was lucky enough to get at least the slim 30th, I know many, many people didn't even get that. Many people, most of us, all wanted the Pro 30th anniversary. Only 12,300 of these, a very limited supply for upwards of 100 million PlayStation fans, something that was kept artificially low in order to produce hype, FOMO, to get people into the store to try to sell them the regular edition of the PlayStation 5 Pro, to get press, about this scalping. This is what they wanted. They wanted the media, they wanted the publicity, but then they turn around and they protected their domestic consumers. I am frustrated. They could have done this for everyone, but chose not to. On the flip side, if you are in Japan, you should be very happy because these measures are going to give you a much, much better opportunity to score this console, the one that everybody wants. Sure, it's still very low chance. You're still relying essentially on RNG, right? That you get selected. But the good news is you're in a pool at least with just other PlayStation fans and PlayStation consumers, not in a pool with a ton of bots and scalpers. I guarantee you, most of the ones that went in the US, UK, and Europe went to scalpers, went to bots that were immediately put up online. A lot of people did get ones for themselves, collectors. That is awesome, but it should have been all collectors. If Sony had applied this policy equally, the scalping has gotten out of control ever since, it's been a story with all console launches, but really with the PS5 during COVID, where you couldn't go out and buy these things in stores. And the way Best Buy and Amazon and all these companies handled the pre-orders back then, right? We are years removed from that. And, you know, the lessons that could have been learned and should have been learned just and clearly were learned. Let's put it that way. Clearly were learned. Um, were not put into effect here in the US and UK and Europe by Sony. On the flip side, you're seeing these retailers then, as we've talked before, do this opposite thing where they're putting all these 30th anniversary slims behind a paywall to give you the opportunity. So, yeah, similar to this PSN where you have to have a membership, but they'll sell you the membership right then, right? Get an extra $100, extra $50, extra $25, depending on what company you're talking about. And yeah, probably won't get one because the bots will do the same thing and get it. But hey, they'll get your $100, they'll get your $50. So the way this whole resale has been handled is just been uh, really frustrating. When I first got through the Sony Direct, I thought, oh, this was an interesting way. It's in a queue. People were randomly selected. It's much more it was handled much better than it was back in the initial PS5 launch. But as more time goes by, we start hearing about these paywalls. We start seeing how Sony handled this in their own country. You start realizing that hey, what they did here wasn't good enough. It was certainly better than it was back then, but it is certainly not good enough. And it's a shame that there are people out there that have more money than sense and are paying up $5,000 for this console. So, what do you guys think? Are you frustrated that Sony has a separate set of rules in Japan for the 30th anniversary pre order than they did everywhere else? Or are you like, who cares? Good enough. I'm glad that they get a good chance to get it compared to all of us, like that had to, you know, just rely on pure luck that some bot and scalpers didn't gobble up these things. Let me know in the comments down below. I really appreciate it if you smash that like button. And as always, thanks for subscribing. And until next time, have fun.